Israelites lived as slaves in Egypt, bound by Pharaoh's cruelty. Their cries for freedom rose like smoke to heaven, and God heard them. He had a plan to demonstrate his unmatched power and deliver his people. God chose Moses, a humble shepherd, to confront Pharaoh. With divine authority, Moses would call for freedom for the Israelites. The mission was daunting, for Pharaoh was mighty and proud, blind to the one true God. When Moses stood before Pharaoh, the ruler refused to listen. His heart was hardened, his mind set on control. Yet God's purpose could not be stopped, and his power would soon be revealed in ways Egypt had never seen. The first sign came as the Nile, Egypt's lifeblood, turned to blood. Fish died, the river stank, and water became undrinkable. The Egyptians realized their gods could not protect them, yet Pharaoh's stubbornness remained. Then came a plague of frogs. They leapt into homes, kitchens, and even the beds of men and women swarming the land. This plague mocked the Egyptian deities and demonstrated that God's authority reached into every corner of creation. The third plague brought gnats from the dust, biting man and beast alike. The land was tormented, and yet Pharaoh's pride would not bend. Even the smallest creatures bore witness to God's power. Swarms of flies followed, filling the houses and streets, spreading disease and chaos. The Egyptians could do nothing to stop them. Nature itself obeyed the command of God, and the world watched in awe. Next, a deadly disease struck the livestock, killing many animals and devastating Egypt's economy. The gods of Egypt, worshipped for protecting cattle, proved powerless. God's sovereignty over life and death was undeniable. Painful boils afflicted the Egyptians and their animals, spreading suffering across the land. This plague showed that God's authority extended over health and human well-being. Yet Pharaoh's heart remained hardened. Hail and fire rained from the sky, destroying crops, trees, and buildings. The storm struck fear into Pharaoh and his people. Even then, Pharaoh temporarily relented, only to harden his heart again once the destruction ceased. Locusts descended, consuming what remained of the crops and leaving the land barren. Egypt faced famine, and the Egyptians saw the futility of their false gods. Yet stubbornness still held Pharaoh captive to pride. Darkness fell over Egypt for 3 days, thick and unyielding. The sun, worshipped as a god, could not shine. The people groped in the blackness, terrified and powerless before God's might. God's final act of judgment was the death of the firstborn in every Egyptian household. Families mourned, cities were shaken, and Pharaoh's power crumbled. Yet God's people were spared through his mercy, a sign of salvation and divine protection. He allowed the Israelites to leave. Their chains were broken and hope returned. But Pharaoh's pride was not fully defeated, and he would pursue them with his army. Reach the edge of the Red Sea, trapped and afraid. God's power intervened once more, parting the waters and creating a path to freedom. The mighty waters stood as walls on either side. Egypt's army followed, only to be swallowed by the returning waters. God's authority had triumphed, demonstrating that no earthly power could stand against his will. The 10 plagues were more than punishments. They were a revelation of God's power over nature, life, health, and human hearts. They revealed the futility of resisting the divine and the consequences of pride. For the Israelites, the plagues were a sign of deliverance, a reminder that God sees the suffering of his people and acts in his perfect timing. Hope was restored and faith was strengthened. For Egypt, the plagues were a warning, a testimony that human arrogance and rebellion against God are futile. Their gods proved powerless, and their rulers' stubbornness brought devastation. The story of the 10 plagues remains a timeless lesson. God is sovereign, merciful, and just. His power cannot be challenged. His people can trust in his deliverance, and all who resist him will see his might revealed.